Hey everybody, hope you've had a fantastic Monday. It's almost over. Hope it's been a great one. Hope you wake up every Monday morning and you're excited about what you're doing. I'm going to be trying something new. I'm going to be trying doing some live videos, share some thoughts, challenges, maybe things to inspire you when it comes to branding and your business and the things that you're doing online. And so I had a thought that came to me earlier today as I was thinking about what I do and the things that excite me. And I'm trying out Facebook Live. I'm going to give it a shot, see how it goes. I'm going to, love for you guys to post some questions, some thoughts, even after the Facebook Live is over. Just post some comments down below. Love to hear your feedback. One thing I want to ask you is, when was the last time you checked yourself, you and your brand and your business and the things that you do? There's several things that I stay busy with what I'm doing with my business. Doing design and graphics and branding is super exciting. It's all I've done my entire career, and I absolutely love it. But one thing I realized is I hadn't really spent time checking my own self when it comes to my branding. I have a website, paulpavolny.com. I've got another one, headsmack.net. And I realized that I really don't have one called vapa.com. And so I thought, man, I've got to get something up. I've got to get my own website up. And it made me think about sometimes, even as you run a business, as you run an organization, that you forget to take care of yourself. There's an old proverb, there's an old saying that says, the cobbler's children have no shoes. Basically meaning that sometimes we get so busy doing stuff for other people that we forget about our own stuff. We don't get our own things done, and they're not where they should be. And sometimes it's even been a while since we've looked at our stuff. I remember several years ago, I got a message from somebody that said, hey man, I think your website's been hacked. And I went and looked at it, and sure enough, it had been hacked by some militant group that was complaining about something, and they had hacked my website and put up some screen of about their cause. And I didn't even realize. I have no idea how long my website had been hacked for. And it really made me realize this morning that sometimes as business owners, sometimes as leaders, we don't check our own stuff. We don't check our own branding. We don't check our own websites. We've left stuff the way they've been for a while. And sometimes we forget that, you know what, we need to check it out. There's a website that I looked at several days ago for a potential client, and their website was a JPEG. And it was a JPEG that had clickable areas that you navigated to another JPEG. And I realized that, man, that site has not been looked at or evaluated in a long, long time, and they probably should evaluate it and see what they could fix on their website. Is your website even compatible with today's technology? Is it still using Flash or outdated technology? Is it responsive? What does it look like on a cell phone? More often enough, every time you're at a traffic light or anywhere, people are just flipping through their cell phone, looking at websites and Facebook and social media, and they're looking on their phones. Many times they don't even look at stuff as much on a desktop as we would imagine. And so ask yourself, is your website compatible to phones and iPads? Is it responsive? Responsive is basically a term that says your website, when it might look great on a screen, and when somebody looks on a phone and goes, and it looks good on a phone, or when they look at it on an iPad, it configures to the iPad and still retains its integrity and still looks good. And so check out your own website on your own phone. I was pretty surprised when Apple came out with the iPhone and how many years it actually took Apple themselves to make their own website iPhone compatible. And so check your website. What does your website look like on a phone? Check yourself. See what's going on with your social media. What does that look like? What does your stream look like? Have you not updated since you joined up in 2007? Or maybe you haven't updated since 2015? Or the stuff you've updated is just irrelevant to where you are now as a company. So check yourself. Make sure that what you're doing is up to snuff and where you want it to be. And so there are several other ways that we can check ourselves. Your logo. I recently talked to a client, and they talked to me about working on some web stuff for them and some social media marketing and some branding. And I looked at their website and their logo, and their logo had, man, it would have been cool kind of in 2005, well, maybe 1995. It had great bevels, it had gradients, it had blurry white backgrounds. I mean, it had all the effects that you could click a button on Photoshop and create, and really looked dated for them and where they were as an organization today. It just did not look like what it needs to look like. And so look at your logo. Is it something that is relevant, or does it look like it was created in 1995? It didn't stand the test of time. It was based on a trend. It was based on a style. It was based on immaturity of the client, or even immaturity of you as a person that asks the designer, man, I want bevels and I want gradients and I want a blurry white glow around it, and I want layers and I want all this other stuff. And so look at your logo. Where's your logo at? Does it feel contemporary? Does it feel fresh? And so for this client, I'm going to take their logo and not lose the DNA, not lose what it looks like, but freshen it up and make it a little more updated to where it needs to be today. But also look at your culture. Look at where you are in your culture. Hey, and thanks guys for checking in, Opie and Elvis and Tim, Judy and David. Thank you so much. And post your questions and post your thoughts. In a moment, I'll take a second to read through them, and we'll talk about it and chat about it and share my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Another thing to look at is your culture. Many companies are living off the momentum of the past. And while momentum is good and powerful, and it can move your company further with less effort if it's good, but if you're living off yesterday's momentum, when the energy was there, when the excitement was there, and people wanted to come and work for you for near nothing because they loved what you're doing and they were passionate about what you're doing, and you're living off that momentum is going to slow down if you don't manage your culture, if you don't manage what's going on in your organization. Because before long, once the momentum of that initial thrill goes, people are going to start saying, you know what, this isn't as great as I thought, and it's not as exciting as I thought, and I'm moving on. I'm checking out. This is not what I signed up for. So check your culture. Have you been very purposeful in making sure that your culture is where it needs to be? Or are you living off yesterday's excitement when you were a startup, or when you first launched what you were doing, or when you first started what you were doing and there was passion and there was excitement and the energy was there and people were just signing up in droves wanting to be a part of what you were doing, but you haven't really maintained that culture in a while. So check yourself on your culture, and check yourself in other areas. On a personal level, I remember when I had my own business, my health went as I spent a lot of time sitting at my desk, watching a monitor, working on my computer. I realized that, man, I was hardly moving. I was not getting up and exercising, and I was not doing the things I needed to do. And so I started gaining a lot of weight, and I'm still, I was struggling with the pregnancy weight for my first child. My wife had the child, but I gained the weight, and still wrestling with that. And then I had a new business, and was pretty excited about it and just kept going and working at it. But I realized I wasn't taking care of my own health. And so now, I'm in business for myself, and I'm doing stuff for myself. And man, I'm spending hours and hours and hours in this chair and in front of the monitor. And, I've had some great times of coaching clients and working on projects and running campaigns and things like that. I haven't really moved a whole lot. And so check yourself. What is your health like? What are you eating? What are you consuming? Are you moving as much as you need to? What about your relationships? Man, that's a tough one. Check yourself on your relationships. Are you spending so much time in the things that you're passionate about that you're not really spending time with the people you love? I remember as a small business owner, my son would come up to me and sometimes just crawl up and like literally stand on my legs and just hold my face and say, "Daddy, I want time with you." Man, that's heartbreaking. You want to say, man, this is just for a season. This is just for a time, but it's like, man, that season's gone on for a year. Maybe it's time that season is over and you have a season of working on your relationships. And so check your relationships. There are other ways to check yourself, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on areas that you need to check yourself, that you've realized, man, I've kind of let stuff slip. But I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And because I think it's really important as we grow what we're doing, as we're passionate about what we're doing, we need to check ourselves every now and then. I started talking about branding. Branding is very key, making sure that your messaging is correct. Sometimes the messaging of your organization as you were starting up was one thing, but now you've matured as a company, you've grown as a company, and maybe you've evolved as a company, and you're still saying the same thing you've always said, and it's a disconnect. People are like, I thought they were this, but they're saying this. So take a look at your print materials, the things that you're putting out, the stuff that is client-facing. What needs a refresh? What do you need to check yourself? Take a moment and say, look, where am I at in my organization? Where am I at in my company when it comes to branding? Have I got lazy about what I'm doing? And do I need to fix stuff and get stuff in check? So that's all I wanted to say. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. I'd love to hear some questions or some points. I see, Opie, you posted something here. Let me just go and see what it is. What sound does it make when you turn your phone on again? Well, when my phone rings, the song is "I Come From a Land Down Under," and when my wife calls me, the ringtone is Wonder Woman. I don't know whether that's the question, Opie, but hopefully that's answered your question. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions? What are some things that people can check themselves on that sometimes we forget are important? Because if we don't check ourselves, I'm serious, the Cobblers children have no shoes because we get so busy doing the things we love. We get so busy doing the things we're passionate about, and we forget about the things that are important. And we forget about checking ourselves every now and then and saying, do you know what? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Am I pushing in the areas I need to push in? I've gone through a time of just trying to figure out what I want to do with VAPA, and I'll post a video one day explaining what VAPA is. I had somebody contact me and say, what's a VAPA? And so I'll answer that question at some point and let you guys in on what that's all about. But even checking yourself in, are you doing your passions, or have you got distracted by the pursuit of things that really aren't that important? And that's really been kind of rolling around in my head today. Monday is that we need to check ourselves and need to make sure that things are the way they need to be, and we're not forgetting to just look back and check things out and make sure they're right. Don't see any questions, but I appreciate all you guys joining me. Quiana, Lacey, David, Carlos, Kyle, James Kyle, man, from San Francisco. Great to see you on here. Rebecca, and Rebecca, did I say Rebecca? I'm sorry, man. My accent is messed up right now. And Nate, thank you so much. And Rebecca, yeah, that's awesome. Love this. I just checked myself. Man, you need to. I mean, this has just been stirring up in me. There are so many areas that we just kind of go into autopilot mode. We go into, we do the things we've always done. We kind of like, here's what happens to, how many of you have to this? You leave your house in the morning, you close the garage door, and you drive down the road. But how many of you have turned around because you're like, did I actually close the garage door? I don't remember. And you've actually turned around and gone to check that you closed your garage door because you forgot you did it. You're on autopilot. You're like, you always have the same movement. You back out, you press the button, you go out your driveway. And I've done that so many times where I've turned around and had to check that I closed the garage door because I forgot I did it. And we get into autopilot so many times in our lives that we forget to check stuff. Check where are your relationships at. Man, just do a check. Am I neglecting the stuff that's important because I'm so busy doing the things that I'm doing? And you've told your family, just be patient. It's for a season. It's just for a time. I've got to do this right now, but it's gone on for a year. And so check yourself and say, you know what? I've got to change stuff. I've got to not be doing the things I'm doing because my relationships with my family are so key. The ones that love me, I need to not neglect. Check yourself in your health. That's really stirred me up this past week. It's like, man, I have a gym membership and I haven't gone in way long, and I need to get there and lift some weights and get moving, or else, when your body is healthy and when you're feeling better in your body, your mind's way healthier. And it's well worth the investment in your health, especially if you're doing brain work, well, even if you're doing physical work, any kind of work, it really does make a difference when you take time for your health. Carlos, let me read your comment here. Thanks for joining us, man. Great to see you. That's awesome, man. I think that sole proprietors don't consider the implications of the product life cycle and its implications to their brand. I'm teaching a graduate course. I wrote branding theory, and that is the focus. That's so cool, man. It's great seeing you on here, Carlos. I've got to spend time with Carlos evaluating student portfolios and having great chats about design and branding and marketing. And man, it's been awesome. Miss hanging out. We got to grab coffee sometime. But yeah, sometimes, things have a life cycle, guys. And, we can keep doing the same thing we've always been doing, producing the same stuff we've always produced because it's worked. But I've often challenged people, especially I've done product design for a long time. And I've challenged people and said, you know what, when it comes to your product and you say, I don't need to change it because it's working. But imagine if you changed it, how much better it would be working. Like, it might be doing well, but it could be doing awesome if you just made some tweaks and changes and checked yourself. And so even product cycles, yeah, absolutely, Carlos, is sometimes we just get so lazy thinking, oh, yeah, man, things are going well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the truth is, you don't know sometimes that it's broke because you're so close to it. And there could be stuff that's broken, how you're doing, how you're communicating, who you are as a brand, or your products, or how you're packaging your products, how you're marketing your products. You might be selling some, but you could be selling plenty. And so do a self-check. Check yourself when it comes to even your products and the things that you're creating. Kelty, so good to see you on here. Thanks for joining me. Rebecca, I'm in the middle of recovery from surgery, has me thinking about reflecting. I've got to come out of this different for sure. That's the truth. Sometimes those things that happen in our life can be triggers and say, man, I've got to check myself. There are things that sometimes happen in our life, unexpected, unplanned, or maybe they just happen because that's just life happens sometimes. And they're a good time to also do a reset and say, man, things have got to change. Whatever happened, but I've got to change from this point on, and my life's got to be different because I don't want to be in the same place. I don't want to go back to where it was. And we've got to hit those turnaround moments in our lives where we say, man, it's got to change. Today's the day. And sometimes it's just getting to that point and saying, and I'm doing it, I'm changing. So who else has got some things that they realize they need to check themselves on, that life, whether it's to do with your company, whether it's to do with your organization, or whether it's to do with personal things. Is this resonating? Give me some thumbs up or some thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your feedback. Is this making sense? Check yourself. Don't let yourself just cruise where you're at without checking yourself every now and then. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Without checking yourself and saying, man, yeah, you're right, Paul. I've kind of got lazy with where I'm at, and I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready to change in this area. I'm ready to take my brand to another level. I'm ready to take my relationships to another level. I'm ready to take my health to another level. Thanks, Gino, for joining as well. Man, Gino Lee is amazing. He has a restaurant called the Big Apple Inn in Jackson, Mississippi, where they serve smokes and ears. And man, it's his smokes. Now, I'll never have a pig ear sandwich. I'm telling you that now. He has a pig ear sandwich that people travel cross country for. And there are people that absolutely love it. I will never eat one, or at least, no, I'll never eat one. For me, there's better parts of the pig, like bacon, things like that. But man, he makes the smokes that he makes at the Big Apple Inn absolutely amazing. Once you've had one, you'll finish off half a dozen before you know it. And then after you've had them, you'll crave them until the next time you have them. And so he runs a great restaurant, and he also caters for business lunches and business events. So hook him up, connect with him. Gino Lee at the Big Apple Inn. Hey, Matthew Breckenridge, man, great. I 24, 5 years ago, we had met, and it was a night that I met my wife. I was at a Thanksgiving dinner with Matthew, man. So good to hear from you. But let me know, guys. I'd love to hear some more thoughts. What are your thoughts on checking yourself? Tracy, Badio, Co. Oh, man, it's so good to see you on here as well. But where else do you see yourself needing to check yourself? Or what about your company or your organization? When it comes to the things that we produce, when it comes to the people we are, where do you need to check yourself? Where do you need to say, do you know what? Things are not the way they need to be. And it's been a long time since I've honestly evaluated myself and said, do you know what? This is not right. This is not what it should be. And so that's my really encouragement today. I want to talk about branding because that's what I do, but I really feel on a personal level, many people don't spend time checking themselves and just doing a self-evaluation saying, you know what? My life's not where I want it to be. My relationship's not where I want it to be. And being honest about it and being really transparent about it and saying, I need help. I need to change. I need to adjust because it's not good. It's, I've neglected some things, and really looking at yourself in the mirror and being honest with you. And so check yourself. That's my encouragement. If there are no other questions, man, I'm gonna sign off here. But I'm going to be doing these live videos often. Sometimes it'll be talking about branding. Other times it'll be talking about business. And then it'll be times that I'm talking about relationships and just personal type encouragement. But I really enjoy this. I really enjoy seeing you guys on here. Please share this video. Once it's signed off, I'll let it stay on my Facebook feed. Paul Vulchek, man, that's awesome. Great to see you on here all the way from Australia. Had a great breakfast with Paul in the mountains in Mount Macedon. And it was awesome, man. Even though they didn't have the mushrooms he wanted, he felt pretty gutted about that. But, man, it was a great breakfast. And we got to chase kangaroos and all kinds of stuff. So, man, Keaton Price in New York. Good to see you on here as well. Hey, Keaton, we're talking about branding and checking yourself and where brands sometimes neglect to evaluate where they are. Sometimes when it comes to websites are not quite where they need to be. They're not responsive. They don't work with mobile or iPads. They don't work with the things they need to work. I saw a website just the other day where that was just a JPEG of it was a JPEG that had a couple of links on the side, and those are just basically hotspots on a JPEG. And when you clicked on those, it took you to another JPEG, and it was terrible. I mean, that's not good for Google to read that page, and so people can find it by words that appear on your page because it's a JPEG. And so, look at where you are as an organization. Look at your web presence. Another thing to also check yourself. Here's something that I found for one client is they had several online presences. They had a Facebook presence, they had a website, but their profile logo was different to the logo that they had on their Facebook cover page, which was different to the logo they had on their website. And so look at your brand as far as consistency. There's value in consistency when it comes to your brand because you're working on equity. And so when you post something, when you push something out as a brand, when you send direct mail, when you do an ad, when you do a TV spot, whatever it is look at consistency. Do you actually have a brand? Do you actually have a look for your organization or your company? Because sometimes, man, you're working on equity when you have a consistent brand. And it gives you a bigger presence because people feel like they're seeing you everywhere, but all they're doing is seeing you consistently. Because you might post something on your Facebook that looks just like something that you post on Instagram, that looks like something that you'll find on Twitter or on Snapchat, that looks like something on your website, that looks like something they might have received in the mail. And so you've maybe sent 5 things, but you've posted consistently, but it feels like to that person that you're everywhere. And then they think, man, I need to take a look at these guys. And so think about that. Do a check on yourself and see if you're consistent in your branding, and have a specific look about it. And that's part of what I love about branding, is creating brand guides and looks for people, because they can have a consistent look and feel across all their media. And that way it just increases their exposure because they're consistent. They don't have to be everywhere. It just feels like they're everywhere because of the consistency. And so let me see, I see some feedback here. Thank you, Carlos, for encouraging Rebecca. That's awesome. Love seeing that on here. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Paul, man, it's great. It was the best breakfast ever. I absolutely loved it, man. I actually sent a bunch of people there after we had a breakfast in Mount Macedon in Australia with Paul. Sent a bunch of people there, and they were just raving fans. Absolutely want to go there. A couple of other people from Australia, Amy Batchelor, Rocky Cuss, glad you joined as well. Keaton, your website is T. I'm not sure what that is. It didn't. It probably posted before you finished that. Hey, thanks for joining me, Paul. I know you got to get back to work. Awesome, man. Great seeing you, Jonathan Berry, man. Great to see you on here as well. Consistency is key. You're right, absolutely right. Because what I see a lot of organizations do, whether they're nonprofit organizations, churches, companies, you change designers, or you change volunteers, or you get a new designer that's kind of new to the design game, and they want to add their flavor to it. They want to make it their own, and they get off brand. And I faced this my entire career because I did it myself. Is I get a project that's maybe an established project, and I want to add my own flavor to it. I want to add my own look to it. I want to add my own vibe to it, and I've got some ideas, and I've got some tricks up my sleeve, and I give it a cool twist. That's my style, but it's off brand, and that's not good, because that hurts the company, and you're not being a good brand manager for the company, because you're not keeping their brand consistent. So absolutely right, consistency is key, and monitor the people that are doing your creative, and just make sure they're on brand. And that's why for a lot of organizations, I really encourage them is after I've created a logo for them, is actually to create a brand guide for them that will guide anybody that ever touches that. And so if you take, you have a sign company creating you a sign, you have the colors that you give them, PMS colors, you give them the fonts that they need to use if they need to add anything to it. You give them the right logos in the right formats. So many times, all you've given is a JPEG, and a JPEG it can only scale to a certain point before it starts losing integrity. And so having an EPS file or an AI file or a PDF file even is very key for that kind of thing. And so consistency really is key, and it really builds equity in your brand and really keeps things looking the way they need to look. Any other questions? Any other feedback? Absolutely. Keaton said consistent, and Keaton's a brilliant designer as well. In New York, I think you're hanging in New York right now, from the South originally, but great designer. Consistent brand is key to gaining and retaining loyal customers. Get Paul to help you. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. But it is, that is one of the things that I see over and over and over for young companies. Really don't have a lot of finances, or don't have a lot of money to invest initially, and so they just get the cheapest designer to create stuff for them, and they're not creative managers. They're launching the thing that they're passionate about. They're doing the stuff that they love, and the designer just wants to be creative, and they'll start taking their brand, from going this way, and suddenly it's inconsistent, and their vehicles look very different from their store graphics to any signage to billboards, and everything looks disjointed and doesn't look consistent. And it really does hurt, especially with launching a new company. it really hurts you. It actually, even though you might not have the money to invest in using a designer with experience, but you're actually losing equity and you're losing the power of consistency by not managing that creative correctly. So, if you have a designer, have them create a brand guide. Have them create a way for you to be able to manage your brand. So if you do get a new designer, if that designer becomes unavailable or too expensive, or they just can't keep up with what they need to do, you have a brand guide that you can just hand to the next designer and say, here's our brand. These are our fonts. These are our colors. These are our super graphics. These are our patterns. These are our shapes. These are the containers and frames and all that stuff that you use for a brand, and many more. But you can hand that to a designer, and they can take your brand and keep iterating it the way it needs to be iterated. Rebecca, so great to hear from you, and hope you start feeling better after your surgery as well. Any other thoughts? What are some other ways that we can check ourselves? I shared company culture. One day I'll do a video just on company culture. I've got a whole seminar that I've created about culture. And culture is pretty important. Culture is cultivated. Culture is cultivated. And so I've got a whole series of lessons. I might turn it into a webinar or a book or something. I've spoken on it a couple of times. It's really resonated with the leaders that I've spoken about culture with. And so, maintaining your culture. Don't get comfortable in last year's, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the momentum that you gained from your initial startup, for your initial energy, from the initial excitement. Don't coast on that. Don't coast on that, because at some point that momentum is going to slow down, and then people are going to be kind of saying, man, it's kind of boring around here. We're kind of into maintenance mode, not momentum mode, and we're not exciting as we used to be, and we're just a factory, and I didn't sign up for this. So check your culture as an organization, because it's so key to everything. And so check your culture as well. Check your relationships, check your health. All of that stuff is important. Thank you guys for joining me today. And hopefully this has been helpful. It's been 32 minutes long. Hopefully I haven't bored you. Throw down some likes, share this. Would love for you guys to get this out if you've enjoyed it. And I'll be trying to do more of these on a more consistent basis. But thank you so much. You guys have a great day, and hope your Monday was awesome. Hope your Tuesday is even better. And love chatting with you. Thanks for all the feedback. And you guys have a great, great, great day. Take care.